Hey everyone, I'm Sebastian Gonzalez, part of the locally world famous chiropractors in Costa Mesa, California. I just did a little video shoot here on our hip impingement, and so if you guys have not been to our channel yet, let me wipe the screen off here. If you haven't been to our channel yet, we have a bunch of videos on hip impingement, and we have this nice little recording studio. And so I thought before I put all this stuff away, that I would just go over, just for you guys, some of the anatomy of hip impingement and maybe make this interactive if anyone does jump on. I don't do a lot of lives because I don't know how they work, but let's see if you guys jump on and have some really great questions. I'm always willing to answer questions as long as they're general enough. I'm not allowed to give you medical advice because I don't really know you, but I'd certainly love to give you some contextual information. So hip impingement is actually a bony overgrowth into this area. One of them, this is called a cam deformity. The other one is in the acetabulum, which is called a pincer. And so the bones as they go here, here's the thigh bone, it's called the femur. All right, here's the pelvis. Let's get this guy's he's always got his arm in the way. This is part of the pelvis, the whole thing's called the pelvis. And then we have the rim here, this is called the ilium. And then we have this section of it is called the acetabulum. The acetabulum, or in the whole socket here, is part of the pelvis, and the ball is the femur. Okay. The bony growths that happen here, actually, they happen usually when people are in adolescence. It's supposed to be associated more to people who have very active youths, young athletes, if you will, prepubescent, pre-puberty athletes who end up having a bony overgrowth. I think there was a study years ago where they did some radiology, x-rays of people prepubescence and then postpubescence, and they found that the postpubescent the ones that were athletic, actually had more overgrowth. I don't think it's a reason to not have your kids do sports, but possibly manage how much they do. That's a note for another day. But once the bone is developed there, it's really not going to change. It's going to be there a bit. Personally, I don't think it needs to necessarily be shaven down or anything of that nature. They say that acetabular impingement is possibly a risk factor associated with labral tears and degenerative joint disease of the hip. But overall, though, I think it really comes down to what you force your hip to do over time. The thing is if you have a bony overgrowth, let's just say here, and you flex your hip a bunch, and then say you like to do like this dance here where you're just twisting your hip in a little bit, it essentially creates contact points. In normal situations, people can tolerate those contact points. But when they end up having excessive use, or they end up having activities that are abnormal to them, like they go on a long hike, but they're usually not hiking that much, then they can end up having irritation. It's the irritation over time and the pain that usually signals things that are a little bit more associated to degeneration, in my opinion. And so I'll just show you real quick of the mechanics I'm talking about. Usually, say if we're talking about this hip as being the one that has the hip impingement. Normally, the movements that bother it is usually flexed up like this. And right now, I'm in a very passive position. My muscles really aren't doing a lot of work there, because the floor is pushing my thigh into this position. So this position creates that contact point I was talking about. And as you drift more this way and let the foot kick out, usually is the position of the most contact point. Okay. Not something you should always avoid, but certainly when symptoms are present, maybe you don't want to irritate the area as much. And so the irritation in the contact over time is what creates, I think, in my opinion, the degeneration of the hip, or the arthritis of the hip, which then is harder to change if that does develop. Now, let me show you some other factors. I think give you a little bit more enlightenment about how to manage this type of thing, because really, in my opinion, no one really fixes anything. We just manage it. Part of our job as a medical professional is to help you not only treat you, but also manage you. Make sure you're doing the right things over time. That's why going in and getting a quote-unquote quick fix doesn't necessarily always work, because symptoms tend to come back for people because their habits haven't changed, their lifestyle hasn't changed, their strength or flexibility hasn't changed, at least over that short period of time. So normally what we try to do is we try to get people to make a change over time while managing their symptoms as quick as we can. Okay, but obviously pain is important, but pain is not the only thing that makes a change over time here, because there's periods of time where most people don't have any pain at all, but then lo and behold later they have arthritis and they wonder how they developed it. We can't predict anybody's future necessarily, but I think it is fair to say that there are things that would theoretically have would put you at risk, let's just say. Okay, so let's just look at this guy again, because I've already told you the things that are probably seem really terrible. You know, like you got this bony growth and you got this like possible degeneration that happens and so on. But the way I like to look at it is, if someone told me it was going to rain outside, I really can prepare myself and make it so I don't get wet, or at least not that much. So you can have a full functioning life if you realize some of the mechanics associated and things you can do, and make sure you have a professional on your side to make sure you're doing the right things over time. So this hole here and the overgrowth associated to it, or the overgrowth associated to it, really changes based upon pelvic position, okay? The ball is subject to moving where the pelvis moves. And so if I take this pelvis here and I dial it back like a clock, this hole actually presents more forward. And what that allows for is more hip flexion, despite having bony changes. Okay, let me say that again. The rotation of the pelvis here allows for more hip flexion, more squatting, more kicking, more running, without provoking and creating the contact point. So how do you create this posterior tilt? Well, do you stay in it forever? No, you don't. You try to make it so your body has a better ability to use the posterior tilt when you're doing physical activity that require more hip flexion, okay? And that all comes down to the core, as we say, okay? The core is kind of I think a poor term. I think we should try to get away from it nowadays, because everyone thinks the muscles, right? They think all the muscles around it. Some people think abs only. Some people think abs and oblique. Some people think backside muscles here. Some people have learned a little bit more, like diaphragm and pelvic floor. But really, it's anything that crosses the spine here, okay? The lats, they cross the spine. So essentially, if you move your arm up, it can actually make it so your spine, if not strong enough, pulls out of position, allows an anterior tilt, creates groin pain. And I've met a lot of people who actually have groin pain associated to pull-ups. Weird, right? So there are other things that cross the spine and into the pelvis from the leg. So hamstrings, quads, adductors, those are all at least very important. I would venture to say the core is actually everything. The body's everything, okay? Now, there's also things that you can't see here, not just because it's a skeleton, but because you can't see phenomena, right? You can't really see wind. You can't see heat. And you also can't see pressure. So internal pressure here, or intra-abdominal pressure, is important, and it allows for better core control than just the musculature, the bony structure alone. So allowing the core to stiffen and allow a posterior tilt and allow the musculature to link up and allow the hip to flex deeper is actually what we need. And so that's not something like holding your breath. It's not something like bracing. And it's not something you should be thinking about when you're actually doing your physical activity. Try to hit a baseball while holding your breath, or try to hit a baseball while keeping pressure. It's terrible. It sacrifices performance. And so really what we want is, you want to use rehabilitation as a means to set a time frame aside so you can actually work on that skill as that will carry over into everyday life. I know I don't need to think about tying my shoes anymore because I learned that skill. I don't need to think about driving a car. Obviously, I pay attention. But there's like little nuances that you don't have to think about anymore. And intra-abdominal pressure coaching is one of them. You can use it with all your exercises that you probably are doing, your clamshells, your glute bridges, your planks, your squats, your lunges. Like all of it can be coached in there if you know what you're doing. So if you guys want some help, please reach out to us, or at very least subscribe to our channel. Give us some thumbs up on these things. We really want to get the best information out there and really empower you guys to know that you can get better. There's a lot of bad information in my regards that disable people on the internet, and I don't mean that in like I'm saying those people are bad, but like it lends to the possibility that you can't get better. I've met so many people who have hip arthritis and don't know it because it doesn't hurt. They come in for a knee condition. They come in for a different condition. So there's bony obstructions like what you have that you can function and live and have a very active lifestyle despite the impingement. So don't anything that makes you feel like it's any different, please read other things and hopefully subscribe to our channel. Share this information with your friends who may be suffering with the same thing. And if you really want help, reach out to us. You can call us 714-392, actually, sorry, 714-502-4243. Or you can email us, info@p2sportscare.com. We have virtual and in-person services. We'd love to help you out best we can. Here's our beautiful office. We have lots of weights and stuff, and these are all implements to show people that they can physically get better and they're physically able. Okay, I'll see you guys next time.